Hi, this is Marek from Solo. Today I have a huge game, Middara Act 1. It's a game published by Succubus Publishing, and thanks Succubus for sending this game for review. This is a huge cooperative adventure, story-driven fantasy JRPG dungeon crawler game with a long campaign, 500 pages long storybook. This is a game that can be played for 1 to 4 players. The main part of the game is this huge long campaign, but you can also play one-shot scenarios. There is a crawl book included where you can play like single games, but the core of this game is this huge adventure. This game was crowdfunded on Kickstarter some time ago. Now it's available on Succubus Publishing website, Middara.com. Go there and check it out if you are interested. In this video, I would like to show you briefly how this game plays. The rulebook for this game is 100 pages long, so there are a lot of rules, a lot of things to learn. But I would like to show you what this game is about, what you can do in this game, what you will do, your heroes, so you get an idea what Middara is about, and then I will tell you what I like about this game, what I don't like about this game, and what is my opinion. So let me show you this game on the table. In this part of this video, I will try to explain you how the game plays more or less. I will not go into too many details, mostly because this game is quite complex. There are a lot of rules. The rulebook has got 100 pages. There are a lot of rules that describe combat and things between combat, leveling up, different weapons, enemies, and everything. But I would like to tell you more or less how the game plays, so you get an idea how the gameplay looks like. Maybe you have heard about Middara and you are curious if this is the game for you. I hope that after this video you will have an idea what the game is about. There are two modes to play this game. The main mode is the adventure mode, where you play a campaign that is separated into different chapters and different scenarios. But you can also play this game as like one-shot scenarios. With the game you get this crawl book and you have different scenarios here. They have different difficulty levels. And if you don't want to play the campaign, you can choose a scenario and just play the scenario without the whole story and campaign and everything. This is a good option if you don't have time to play the campaign, or if you want to show Middara to someone and this person doesn't want to commit 100 hours or more to the whole Middara campaign, you can play just a single scenario. But the main part of this game is this huge 500 pages long storybook, adventure book. And in this adventure book you have the whole story of this game and all the scenarios and chapters. And the game, if you choose the adventure mode, the game starts in this book. You will read some story, some description, you will create your initial characters, and you will read through the chapters. At some point you will get to an encounter, to a scenario that looks like this. It shows you the map that you have to place on the table. It shows you some special rules and objectives, win condition, lose condition, the setup. Some things are hidden with this red areas here, and you need this special tool that was included in the game. If you cover it with this tool, you will be able to read what's here. It's a great mechanic, because normally you don't see things that you shouldn't see. When you do specific things in the scenario, you can read the hidden text. After you finish a scenario, you will continue reading the story. Depending of the outcome of the scenario, you will read a specific chapter. Sometimes you will have to do skill checks. Sometimes you will get some loot, and then you will continue, and then you will go to another scenario. What you see here on the table, I forgot about one thing. There's also this diagram book, because each scenario shows you the layout of the map. But there is this diagram book with additional maps and additional, terrain tiles. Sometimes during a scenario, when you will do specific things, like, I don't know, get a specific item or loot, or pull a lever, you will be directed to this diagram book, and it may happen that you will have to add another tile with some new area that you have uncovered during the game. So this is also a cool thing, because what you see when you set up the scenario sometimes is not everything. Sometimes during the scenario you will discover new areas, maybe some additional loot or monsters that you will have to defeat. But when you go to a scenario, this is scenario number 2, not the first one. The second one is looks more interesting on the table. I hope it's not a spoiler for you. This game has got a lot of scenarios, and the first few scenarios are like introduction to the whole Middara game. The main area here is the map. You have different terrain tiles. They are all numbered. The scenario tells you which one you have to use, and they have different terrain printed. Like here you have water area, hindering terrain. The terrain with this red border is like terrain that you cannot pass or walk through. Some terrains have different elevation, like for example this one. You see it says elevation 1 and 3, and you can imagine that this area here and here are on different elevation levels. Scenario tells you exactly how to place these tiles. There are a lot of tiles in the game box. They are double-sided, so plenty of different terrain. Then you have to place monsters. Each monster has got a miniature. They have different bases, different color, so you know which enemy is which. Some enemies appear on the start of the scenario, some appear during the game when you do specific things. Each monster has got a card that describes all the behavior of a monster, some passive abilities, active abilities, health, defense, movement, armor, the dice the monster is using in combat. Everything is written on a monster card. On the back of a monster card you have description, story, description of what type of monster is this. There's a lot of reading in the storybook, adventure book, but also on the monster and hero cards. Each monster has got a different card, so each monster in this game behaves differently. Description how monster behave is not written in the rulebook, but on every monster card in this game. On the top is the initiative track. Each hero and each monster, they have this initiative cards. These cards are shuffled before each round of the game, so the order in which player and monster act during each round is different every round. And you have your heroes. I have 2 heroes here. Every time you play the game you need 4 characters, 4 heroes. I didn't place 4 on the table because they will not fit in the frame of my camera, but you have to use 4 characters. Here are 2 of them. The remaining 2 are here, and each hero has got a hero card. Of course, here we have some description, and here we have name, space for stamina points, special abilities that this character has got, conviction and casting dice that show you which dice you will use when you will cast a spell or when you defend against a spell, different attributes like presence, lore, agility, perception, and strength. During the game you will sometimes be asked to do a skill check, and you will use this number to perform the skill check. And here you have your basic health, defense, and movement. Of course, this is not everything, because each character has got different items. You can have weapon, you can have armor, you can have some cores or consumables like one-time use items that you can use for the effect and then discard this card. The characters, they have different special abilities or spells. The small cards here are the discipline cards. There are 5 different types of discipline in this game. You can think of them like different classes or like character classes, but each hero in this game is not tied to a specific class. During the game, when you will gain XP and you will level up, it's up to you how you will develop your hero, your character. But these small cards with these different abilities, they give you additional options in your turn. Each character starts with 3 stamina points, and stamina points are important because they are used to perform different actions in the game. At the start of each round you have to shuffle these initiative cards. You will randomly place them on the table, and this is how heroes and enemies the order in which they will act. There are a lot of dice in this game. Different dice have different values. The purple one is the most basic one, but you have a lot of different die. You will roll those dice when you attack, defend, counter attack, and dodge, and when you cast spells, when you do skill checks. Your turn starts with some start of the turn phase. Sometimes some abilities will activate in this phase of each turn. Then you have your status phase. There are a lot of statuses in this game that you can gain. Some are good, some are bad. Like you have paralyze or darkness, disease, and poison. And at the start of each turn, the things written on this status token will happen. Then you have your refresh phase, where you regain 3 stamina. Stamina, as I said, is used to perform different actions. If you don't use all your stamina during your turn, then you can spend the remaining stamina either in enemy turn to dodge or to counter attack, or you can leave the stamina for your next turn. You can never have more than 5 stamina. You will gain 3 new stamina points each turn of the game. Also, in this refresh phase, you will refresh cards, because some cards, they have this exhaust keyword. If you want to use this ability, you have to exhaust the card, like turn it 90 degrees. The ability of an exhausted card cannot be used. The card as it is, it can be used, but you cannot use the exhaust ability. At the start of each turn, you will refresh those cards. And then there's the main phase, the action phase, where you will spend your stamina points to perform different things. There are things that like cost you stamina points. There are some special actions that don't, like all the abilities on card that tells you to, for example, here, if I want to cast a spell, Gore Shot, I have to exhaust this card, so flip it, rotate it. But this doesn't cost me stamina points, but the basic actions cost. What are the basic actions in this game? You can move. Moving costs 1 stamina point. Each hero has got the movement written on the card. This is the number of spaces you can move. You cannot move diagonally. You can move up, down, left, right, but you cannot move diagonally. Each space costs you 1 movement point, but there are some terrains like water or hindering terrain that cost you 2 movement points to move from this spot. You can go through your allies, but you cannot end your movement on a space with another ally, and moving out of a space with an ally also costs more movement points. If you want, you can spend additional stamina points to move even further. 1 stamina point is your basic movement from your card, and then each additional stamina point you spend gives you 2 more movement points. You can only move once in your turn. Even if you have more stamina, you cannot move twice. You can of course move before attacking or after attacking, it's up to you, but if you decide to move, you can only do it once. The second thing you can do, you can spend 1 stamina point to perform encounter action. Some scenarios have specific actions like pull a lever, pick up some loot, and this costs 1 stamina as well. You can spend 1 stamina to re-equip, and if you stand adjacent to another hero, you can take items from this hero. You have a limited space here, like you can have 1 armor, 2 weapons, but you also have a pack. In this pack you can carry additional items, and if you want to re-equip the items from your pack, this is the re-equip action that does it. And you can attack. Attacking costs 2 stamina points, and the attack depends on your weapon. If you have a range weapon, you have to check the range, you have to check the line of sight. You cannot shoot enemies through other enemies, or you cannot, for example, shoot up. If your enemy is higher than you, on higher elevation, you cannot really shoot this enemy from range. You have like melee weapons and range weapons, you have spells, it's up to you. But if you want to attack, you have to spend 2 points. Let's say I'm here, I'm adjacent to this beast, this cave seagull, and I want to attack this enemy. Then I have to check what dice I can use in my combat. Each weapon shows you the dice that is used. you will always roll 2 dice during an attack. Here it shows you if this is a one or two-handed weapon, and this is the type of attack. So I can use 2 warhammers because Rook is a very powerful guy. He can carry 2 warhammers. So it shows me white die and white die. So I will use 2 white dice to attack. If I will have, for example, if I would have only 1 weapon, and this 1 weapon shows me 1 die, then I will get a 3 purple die. So you always roll 2, but the purple die is the weakest in the game. So it's better to have weapons that give you better dice. And then I will roll my die. If I have stamina, I can use 1 stamina point to empower my attack, and then I will add this black die. This die doesn't have any number, it only has got symbols. The symbols are important when you will deal damage to an enemy, because different symbols can give you additional damage depending on your weapon. Here, for example, 2 shields give me 2 physical damage. Star gives me 1 additional damage. After I roll the die and after I check if I have successfully attacked an enemy, I can convert those symbols from this dice to additional damage. So this empower die can give me additional damage, but one side shows a skull, and if I roll the skull, the attack misses completely. So this is like my a risk I can take if I want to spend 1 stamina. But basically I take my 2 die and I will roll them. I have rolled 6 and 3. This is my roll. So the total number is 7. And now if I want to attack an enemy, I have to compare my roll to the defense value of the enemy. Because the attack in this game is divided into 2 parts. First, you check if you successfully attacked the enemy, and if you did, then you can calculate the damage. This is important because, as I said, some of the symbols give you additional damage, but you cannot use the symbols if you didn't successfully attack the enemy. If I want to deal damage to an enemy, I have to roll a number equal or higher to enemy defense. The defense is 8, I have rolled 9, this is higher, it's great. So I can calculate my damage. First, you have to subtract defense from your attack roll. It's 9 minus 8 is 1. This enemy doesn't get any armor, so it's 1. And now I can check my weapons to see if I have any symbols that I can convert to damage. Here, 2 shields give me 2 plus 2 physical damage. So I can convert these 2 shields to plus 2 damage. So instead of just 1 damage, because 9 minus 8 defense is 1, plus 2 from the symbols, I will deal 3 damage to this Cave Seeker. This enemy doesn't have any dodge abilities, doesn't have any counter abilities, it cannot fight back, so I will deal 3 damage. It's got 6 health, so I take 3 the damage tokens from this cool box, like this, and I will put it on the enemy. If I deal enough damage, I will defeat the enemy. When the enemy attacks you, it works similar, because it's got this attack dice here, and when the enemy attacks you, you can try to dodge the attack. You will roll this die, this black die. Dodging costs 1 stamina point, but any shield you roll on this die will add to your defense value. So for example, if someone wants to attack Rook, his defense is 7, and if I dodge the attack and I roll this, his defense will be 7 plus 4, 11. So dodging is cool, but you need to spend stamina, and of course you don't want to roll this skull. If you successfully dodged, you can try to counter, or you don't have to dodge, but you can also counter an attack. If the attack of your enemy didn't deal you any damage, you can counter and you can fight back, but you have to spend 2 stamina points. Depending where you stand on the board, you can have some positive or negative modifiers to your attack. If you, for example, shoot someone who is standing on hindering terrain, you will get -1 to your attack. If you try to shoot through your allies or attack through your allies, you also have -1 to the attack. But for example, if you flank enemy, if two enemies stand on opposite sides of an enemy, you have +1 to attack. There is this different elevation. So this game is quite tactical because depending on the items you have, on the icons you have, you can empower your attack, you can stand in different terrain to modify the attack roll. So it's quite tactical. You, instead of range or melee attack, which works like I show you, you can try to cast spells. For example, Nightingale has got this Gore Shot spell, and if I exhaust this card, turn at 90 degrees, I can cast a spell with value 6. This is the force, the power of the spell. This is the basic power. Now I will roll my die. The die that I use for spells is shown on my character sheet, casting 1 purple die. I may have an item, for example, that will exchange this die to a better one, but the basic one is purple. And I have to roll this die. It's 6. I can also empower my my spell. It costs, like always, 1 stamina. Any book I roll will add to the power of my spell, but you just look at the number normally, it's 6. The power of my spell is also 6, so it's 12. If the enemy is in range, of course I have to be in range of the enemy. I can cast the spell. The power of the spell is 6 plus 6 from my die. And now the enemy, for example, let's say it's a Cave Sickle, he's got this conviction dice shown here. And he will take those dice and he will have to roll 12 or more to defend from my spell. Let's say he rolls this, it's 5 plus 4, it's lower than the power of my spell, so Cave Sickle is hit with my spell and will get damage described on the spell card. In this case, this is 2 magical damage. If I will wound myself, I can deal additional damage to the enemy. So when you cast spells, or when enemy casts spells on you, you don't use your armor and you don't use your defense, but you will use the conviction roll to defend against spells. When there is enemy turn, the enemies behave in a very clever way, because the behavior of an enemy is not described in the rulebook, but is described on enemy card. Each enemy has got a specific description of all the behaviors. Like, here are some passive abilities, and for example, Cave Sickle has got sickle anatomy, he's immune to poison, he can move anywhere, and he doesn't, his movement cost is not increased by different terrain or allies. Hive Mind, the more Cave Sickles are like close to each other, the more powerful are their attacks. And then there are different actions the enemy can take. And you go from top to bottom and try to do the first action the enemy can. For example, is there an opponent adjacent? The enemies, let's say they are here, I'm here, there is no opponent adjacent. So I skip this part. Is there an opponent within a range 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, no. There is no enemy in range 4. I cannot do this thing. Can it move and attack an opponent within range 4? He's got movement 6. And yes, he can. He can move, for example, here, or here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 1, 2, 3, but he must stand to be in line of sight on the edge. He's in range, so he can attack. So he will perform the last option. Move to be at up to range 4 from the nearest opponent, and then make a distance attack 4. So the enemy will roll the combat dice. In this case, he will roll 2 white die because there are 2 other Cave Sickles around him, and he will roll the dice, and I will try to defend, I will try to dodge, I will calculate my defense from my card and from my other equipment or items that I have. If I dodge, I can pay 1 stamina point to roll this die, and each shield increases my defense. If an enemy failed to attack me or missed the attack, didn't roll more or equal to my defense, I can counter and I can fight back. Each enemy has got different passive abilities, different actions. So this is really cool because each enemy behaves differently. You have to go from top to bottom to try to perform the action from enemy. Sometimes it's then, so you do part 1 and then something else. So it's quite complex and but works really cool and interesting. This game, of course, in this game you have to do the objective from each scenario. Sometimes it's defeat all enemies, sometimes you have to go to a specific place or go to an exit spot. But if there is a turn in which no enemy spawn, no enemy is defeated, and no enemy is activated, because sometimes enemies will not activate because they will go from top to bottom through all their abilities, and no abilities will be a match, so the enemy will just stand and wait. If there is a situation that no enemies moved or attacked or anything, you will add the time tokens to the end of the stamina track. And this is like a timer that speeds up the game for you, because normally without this, and if you need to get the 4th time token in the game, you lose the scenario. And this is clever mechanic because it forces you to move forward and to push and not to stand in one spot, because otherwise without this mechanic you could stand for 5 turns in one spot, use your stamina to power up, to get different statuses, bonuses and everything, and then when you will be powered up, you will go and fight enemies. And thanks to the time tokens, you have to move, you have to try to fight enemies and try to lure them and be in combat, because as I said, 4th time token makes you lose the game. After you finish a scenario, you may get some rewards. Sometimes you will be able to level up, to buy new equipment, to get new discipline cards. You will read this story. In this story you will have different choices. Sometimes you will have to make a skill check. If you have to do a skill check, you will take 2 purple die, you will roll them and add the rolled values to the skill that you are testing. If the result is equal or higher to the one that you were forced to test from the scenario, you passed. If not, you didn't pass. Not always being defeated in the scenario ends the game, because some scenarios they have different outcome and different chapter to read when you fail the scenario, so it's not always that you have to win each scenario. But basically this is more or less how you play the game, like a dungeon crawler. You have different maps. Some maps will get bigger during a scenario if you do specific things, thanks to this diagram book. You have different monsters, they all behave differently. You have your stamina points, your actions, your equipment, and you will try to defeat the enemies and survive and complete the scenario. As I said, combat is quite tactical, different elevations, terrain tiles, flanking, dodging and counter attacks. So you have to plan and think, especially that each enemy behaves completely different. They behave different from each other. This is how you play Middara. Now you know how to play Middara, more or less. You know what this game is about. Now I would like to tell you what I think about this game. I will tell you some, I would say, facts about this game, not really pros and cons, and you have to think if the things I mention are a good thing for you or not necessarily. This is a huge, ambitious dungeon crawler game. I think it's the most ambitious board game project I've seen. If you think of the story, the 500 pages long storybook, all the lore and the gameplay and the enemies and cards and everything. This is just Act 1. Act 2 and 3 will follow. So with all the content, with 3 acts, this will be the biggest, I think, board game there is. But what are my thoughts about this game? First of all, this game is a huge table hog. I have written it down on my mobile to not forget about stuff. This is a huge table hog. This game is huge. It takes a lot of space, and you need a lot of space to play this game. Even the player area for each character is huge. You have a big character card, all the items, weapons, armor, everything. You really need a big table. The first scenario maybe don't take that much space because you only use 2, 3 terrain tiles, but the more tiles you have, the more equipment you have, you need a big table. Second thing is that this game has got a lot of rules and a long and complex rulebook, and the rulebook is written in a way that you really have to read it from A to Z. There is no tutorial, like no introductory scenario with a separate rulebook that will guide you through the first few rounds of the game. You open this box, you get this 100 pages long rulebook, and you have to start reading. Ideally, it will be like to read the rulebook, then you should probably play 1 or 2 scenarios, and then you should read the rulebook again to check if you play everything correctly. But there is a lot of reading and learning before you even start playing this game. Also, another thing is, as I said, this game doesn't start slow. You don't really get like an introductory, very simple scenario with some basic heroes and some basic stuff. You get monsters, you get monster cards, you have different terrain, you have 4 quite complex characters. When you start playing this game, you should probably know how to play the whole game, because you have different terrain tiles, light of sight, different type of attack and spells and everything. It doesn't give you a very simple introductory scenario to learn the game. It goes 100% Middara from the moment you start the game, so you need to be prepared. I think the goal is to scare off the casual gamers, and when you open the game and start playing, you know that you need to be a hardcore gamer in order to play this game. Another thing, this game it's a really story-driven game. Some games, they say they are story-driven, but you have some small text written on cards or in a small storybook. This game has got 500 pages long storybook. Of course, some of the storybook contains the setup for encounters, but most of it is story, and you have to read and read and read a lot. You can get the Foreteller app, which is really great. I'm not sure if you have used it. Foreteller is this app that gives you narration for different big storytelling games. So all the text written in the storybook is read by a lector, by a professional, and the narration from Foreteller for Middara Act 1 is free, so you can just download it and try it. But still, there is a lot of reading in this game, and it reminds me of some video games where you have, I don't know, for example, Metal Gear Solid for PlayStation, and sometimes the cutscenes between the missions took 20-30 minutes, where you had to sit and watch a cutscene. This is like in Middara. You finish a scenario and you have like 6, 7, A4 pages long of story, of dialogues and different things. So if you like storytelling games, you will be delighted. If you don't like to read a lot, I'm not sure if Middara is a great option for you. The game is very complex, and as I said, it got a long rulebook, but I think the complexity of this game is not really... the rules are not that complex, because you have some stamina points, some basic actions, you have enemies, you will move around, attack the enemies, they will attack you. Each actions of each enemy are written on the enemy cards. But there are a lot of things that you have to track and remember about, because you have your character has got special skills, you have this discipline cards with additional skills, different items, and the items sometimes trigger in specific part of the turn. Different dice, different rerolls, you can exhaust cards to activate different options. And when you play solo, you also need to use 4 characters, and you need to remember about all these things. Scenario can give you some specific rules, enemies have specific rules, different terrain, different combat, terrain affects combat, line of sight, elevation, a lot of moving things that you have to remember if you want to play this game correctly. Of course, nothing bad will happen if you forget about a rule or 2, but I forgot about some rules when I played the game, and not really about rules, but many times when I played this game, I forgot about abilities that my characters had, that if I use them, my game will be maybe easier, and I will have some advantage. in specific situations, but I forgot about them because there are so many cards that I had to read and remember that I forgot about some abilities of my character. So there's a lot of things that you have to track, a lot of bookkeeping in this game. Next thing, this game has a very satisfying and strategic combat. It's not just a typical dungeon crawler where you move to an enemy, you roll your die, then you deal damage, then the enemy fights back, and that's it. You roll your dice for your characters, then you roll enemy dice, and this is combat. No. You have a lot of skills, a lot of actions. You have some melee weapons, range weapons, you have spells, different terrain, you can flank your enemies, you can dodge, you can counter attacks. Very strategic, very tactical combat. Another thing is that this is a JRPG game. If you have not played any Japanese RPGs on your, I don't know, video game, consoles or computer, there are games like Final Fantasy and Fire Emblem and Joan d'Arc on PSP. This game is a typical JRPG game in my opinion. A lot of cutscenes, a lot of reading, a lot of story, a lot of dialogues, very tactical combat, but a lot of narrative in this game. You have like manga style artwork, you have ladies with, you know, big boobs and huge swords. So this is like a typical Japanese manga style RPG game. If you like this style, it's great, but this is not a dark fantasy, elves, dwarves type of fantasy game. The story in this game takes place in an alternative, maybe not alternative universe, but on a different planet called Middara. The planet is connected with Earth through some portals, and people that go from Earth to Middara, they like physiognomy changes. So some of the people, they have tails or wings or horns or something. Being on Middara makes you immortal, you don't age, you don't get any diseases, you can die if you, for example, fall from a cliff, but you will not age. So this is like an alternative reality. It's a modern fantasy, so you have magic there, but it's not like a medieval fantasy game. It's very twisted and very like typical JRPG game, so you have to like this genre of games. What can I tell you? I think that Middara is like if you have big table, if you have time, if you like to read a lot, if you like narrative games, and if you like dungeon crawler type of games, adventure games, this is the best game you can get right now in terms of dungeon crawler adventure RPG games, in my opinion. I've played a lot of this type of games. I like cooperative games, I like fantasy adventure games, I played a lot of campaign, story-driven games, but I think that this one is the best of the best. It got its downsides, like I said, you need a big table, there are a lot of rules you have to learn. If you play solo, you need to play with 4 characters that are quite complex. This game is quite complex, a lot of things that you have to track and to learn and to do. You need a huge table and you need to commit a lot of time because there is a lot of reading that takes time, there are a lot of scenarios that takes time. This is not a campaign game like, I don't know, Tainted Grey, where you have 13, 14, 15 scenarios and the game ends. I don't know how many scenarios this game has, but I know 50, 40, 60, a lot. You will have to spend a lot of time to finish Act 1, and then there will be Act 2 and Act 3. But as I said, if you have the table, the time, and the will to play such a huge and complex game, this is amazing game. When I started playing Middara, this game didn't leave my table for 1 or 2 weeks. I played every day, I learned all the rules, and maybe the first few days of having Middara on my table was more about learning rules and learning how to play properly. But then when I learned, I played this game, it's amazing. So many characters, different options to level up, to create your characters. You have different abilities and spells and items, different enemies, and each enemy feels unique, and this is amazing. In a lot of adventure dungeon crawling games, the enemies, they don't feel that much different from each other. They have different artwork, they have maybe one different ability and different stats, but more or less they behave the same. Here each enemy works differently, you have to study enemy cards, have different strategy for each enemy. Great, amazing, tactical adventure RPG game. If you can afford it, it's not a cheap game, I think $250 if I'm not mistaken. If you can afford this game, if you like this type of games, I can really recommend Middara to you. Amazing game. I'm sure this game will be in my top 10 games for 2024. It's March, but I can already tell you it's one of the best games I've played in years. I love this game, I plan to play this game. I'm not sure if I will finish this game because I'm not sure if I'm able to commit so many hours into one game, but I will try to play as much as I can and finish as many scenarios as I can because it's such a good game. Thanks for watching. Visit me on Facebook, visit me on Instagram, on Twitter. You will find link in the description of the video. I will also leave link to Succubus Publishing website where you can buy Middara in the current 1.2 edition, the latest one, the one that is here, that has got a better rulebooks, some errata on cards, better insert and bigger box. Great game. Click the like button if you like the video. Follow me on all the social media platforms. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.